I've been really lucky to live in beautiful places like Pittsburgh. And my love for nature began when I was a kid in a hill town in Puerto Rico. And I tell you, spectacularly beautiful. There's mountains and rivers and vegetation all over and birds and trees and streams. And we used to be outside all the time. And not everything was peachy in my life like everybody else's, of course. My father lost his job at some point, and my parents got divorced, and my mother and my 3 siblings and I became poor. And so when I went to study college at the University of Puerto Rico, I decided that I wanted to study economics, because after going through a long list of possible majors, that one sounded like money. And I was looking out for number 1, of course. Now, one more thing about my town, there is a spot where you can stand and you can look this way and see the Atlantic Ocean, and you can look that way and see the Caribbean Sea, and in between, there's a whole bunch of hills and vegetation. Totally gorgeous. If you want to impress somebody, that's where you take them. One day I was loitering with my friends in the town, near the town hall, the town plaza, and somebody said, let's go camping in the river. Now, that's not usually how we did it. You can go back and forth to the river in 1 hour. So we didn't have to go camping, but I knew what they were up to. The idea was to find a path between our usual spot in the river to this big canyon that was probably 5 or 7 miles away. And you'll see in one of these pictures up here, where big waterfall. We had no clue whether we could, how to do that. I mean, whether this particular river connected with that particular canyon. But when has not knowing ever deterred a group of teenagers from doing anything? So off we went home and got some things. We drove down about half an hour and then parked, and then we went down the river about another half an hour. And then we started walking up to our usual spot, and then we started walking upstream to the canyon. And we, after 4 hours or so, we stopped. When we were tired, we stopped. It was, this is where we're going to camp. And we decided to play ball. I mean, we found some little bit of driftwood, and we made a ball out of tin foil, and we just started playing. Needless to say, none of us made it to the major leagues, or the minor leagues, or the little leagues. I'm kidding. We did make it to the little leagues, but that was being there was a reflection of the fact that I had grown anxious that my future job as an economist was going to keep me tied to a desk and an office, when all I really wanted to do was to be outside. And one good day, I went to my advisor and said, hey, I want to change my major to environmental studies, because I had this image that geography or something was going to mean that I would be outside all the time, little that I knew. And he said, when are you graduating? And I said, well, this summer. And he didn't say this, but I could read his body language, and I could hear his mind going, now you want to switch at the end of your college years? You got to be out of your mind. But that's not what he said. What he said was, have you heard of environmental economics? And I said, oh, awesome. So I stayed at the University of Puerto Rico for a while longer there. But back to the river anyway. We found a place. We were playing ball. Somebody said, water level is rising. Now, if I had grown up in Pittsburgh or Millvale, I would have known what that meant. But nobody, water level is rising didn't mean anything to me. We lived, 5 or 6 or 7 miles away from the river. So we didn't really pay attention to that. soon, a lot of water was coming down, and we realized that we had to get out. We had to get out. And we started to get out, and it was, water was coming down, was really, was getting harder and harder to go through the river. And as we were going out, a friend of mine fell, Teddy fell, and the person behind him, Ernie, by the way, if you're thinking Teddy and Ernie, yeah, these are Puerto Rican names, actually. They fell, and we began to panic because there was a lot of water, and these people knew how to swim, but it wasn't about knowing how to swim. The thing is that you have to get out. You have to get out quickly. I don't really know how we managed. It was the scariest moment of my life up to that point, and we formed a human chain by linking arms, and after a while, we got them out, and then we realized that we had lost everything. Food, backpacks, shirts, shoes, keys, car keys, gone. Everything was taken by the river. So now we had to go up the hill for about 2 hours. And when we got to this is, by the way, this is hacking through vegetation because there was no path. And by the time we got there, the sun had set, and the few cars that were going by were not going to give us a ride, because you can imagine what we look like. We look like bedraggled zombies, something. So the cars would come by, and they would be like, please, and they would just speed away. You can imagine what we look like. But at some point, somebody came in a pickup truck and gave us a ride and took us home. And I remember reflecting about this years later, that I really enjoyed growing up in this beautiful town, but I also had learned that the world can be a scary place, and that the whole scale, and that the world can be a better place if we help each other out. I was no longer looking out just after myself. Thank you.